Welcome back to another reading of Correcting of Stepping Up by me, Tina, the Tiger Knights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing chapter 51. Have you ever heard of a King Barnacle the Just? Tibs asked Alistair, who was seated before him on the floor, legs crossed over each other in a way that looked to be painful, but his teacher didn't seem to mind. Tibs was seated on the floor too, but his legs crossed the normal way. And this was supposed to be another session of him trying to push his essence out of his reserve. But since that had already happened, when he observed some of Bardic's essence, his mind kept wondering. He really wanted to tell his teacher about that, so we could move on to something useful to him, but secrets weren't supposed to make his life difficult. I can't say the name is familiar, Alistair answered, eyes closed. But the world is large and there are many kings. Now, focus on your reserve, Tibs. For a few seconds, during which Tibs fought the urge to ask why there were so many kings, the only sound was their breathing. Alistair sighed. Why do you ask? One of the recruits claimed to have killed one of his regiments. Alistair opened an eye. Did he now? Is he lying? Do you know how large a regiment is? Tibs shook his head. Jackal told me it's a group of people that fights for a king, and there's a lot of them in one, but he didn't know the number. They'll vary in size between kingdoms. The smallest I know of is made of 250 soldiers. Julius of Bastalon keeps his regiment at 1,000. Tibs didn't bother working out the size of the numbers. Hundreds were enough to boggle his mind, so 1,000 would be bigger. Then he's lying. Exaggerating, at the very least. Did he say if he was alone when he did it? Sort of. Tibs shrugged. I killed the regiment, is what he said. Maybe he was trying to impress us. Alistair looked thoughtful. Criminals are not who I tend to interact with. Certainly not any that would be pulled from catacombs. Unlike you and those who arrived before, they aren't breaking laws simply in the pursuit of surviving. They'll be at ease with it. Laws are rules, Tibs said, like the ones Harry set for the towns. I know what laws are. So, those recruits, they're all bad people? Alistair started responding, but stopped. The laws they broke are the king's law. That makes them more important, but not all laws are just. If this King Barnacle feels the need to proclaim himself the just, I doubt he is. It doesn't mean what this recruit you speak of did was right, did it? But he may have felt his reasons for it were good. He thought about Bardic, who was willing to kill Stowe to stop the guild from exploiting people like him. What happened to Bardic? Who? He was the leader of those who tried to kill the dungeon. He was an adventurer, and he has darkness as his element. Right, him. You knew him. He was here because he'd broken guild rules. Trying to destroy a dungeon is among the worst things he could have attempted. He was sent to Castle Despair. I thought he was sent to a prison. The castle is a prison, or rather, it's catacomb. That's where we send prisoners who are too powerful to be held anywhere else. Oh, Tibs. Put him out of your mind, Tibs. No one sent to Castle Despair ever leaves it. Tibs closed his eyes. He thought it would be kinder to just kill Bardic instead of sending him to a place like that. So, could he have killed the regiment? Bardic? Alistair asked, surprised. This would be a question. No, Quigley. That's his name, the recruit's name. Could one man kill a full regiment? His teacher mused. A small one, maybe, if this man knows how they operate and had time to prepare the terrain. But such a man wouldn't be here. A man who defies a king with this solidly is beheaded in front of a crowd to ensure it is never attempted again. Alistair fell silent, and Tibs opened his eyes. Alistair looked back at him with curiosity. It is possible that your recruit was caught for something else. A king can't act in reprisal if he doesn't know he was that culprit himself. But then he wouldn't be in the catacombs. Tibs hesitated. Are you looking at me like this is my fault? Alistair chuckles. That isn't why I'm looking at you. If anyone else had told me this, I'd tell them the man was outright lying to them. But you, Tibs, have a habit of attracting the oddest people. What do you mean? Look at your team. The son of a master criminal, a man claiming to be the cleric of darkness. No such thing is even possible. You, a rogue, have befriended Harry Hartknuckles, whose dislike for us is so intense that if not for his orders from the guild, we'd all be in cells. Harry isn't my friend. Tibs scoffed. He doesn't even like me. But he respects you enough to ask for your help. That's an even harder thing to make happen. Not special, Tib grumbled. He didn't want to be respected by the guard leader. Or the guild. You wanted to be Tibs, runner and rogue, nothing else. Your eyes contradict you, Tibs, Alistair replied with a smile. But it's also how you think and what you've accomplished. His teacher's expression became serious. I suspect that you, Tibs, will be someone who accomplishes great things given time. I'm not. Tibs' frustration strangled the words. He was only interested in keeping the town safe, surviving his runs, reaching Epsilon, and then he didn't know what would happen then. He'd been an adventurer and no longer a runner, but that didn't mean he'd do what Alistair thought. He wouldn't do anything if he couldn't figure out a way to graduate despite not being able to push water out of his reserve. I'm going to start by reaching Lambda, he told his teacher, resolutely, and closed his eyes. There had to be a way to make himself slippery, as had been described, without suffusing his body with water. The thief moved cautiously through the dark alleys. She knew she was being followed. Anytime Tibs got close enough to watch her, she looked over her shoulder and around, even up. She'd almost seen him one time, despite his dark clothing against the night sky. So now he relied on his senses, keeping track of her faint essence. He hadn't been able to stop her sabotage. She'd sneaked into a tavern stockroom, was sleeping drunk, and had poured something into a handful of smaller barrels. He hadn't felt the corruption she was carrying until it poured out of the container, and it reacted with the drink too quickly for him to stop it. Smaller barrels meant more expensive alcohol, spirits of some kinds. Since wines were in bottles, she got to have the barrels before Tibs could pull the corruption out of what she poured. As she poured it, he wanted to get close to take the container and find out why he couldn't sense through it. But since he hadn't been able to stop her from causing damage, that's another one. He wanted. He wanted to follow her to whoever had given the orders. Yes, it should be whom, but I'm not doing that. He wanted to hand over that person to Harry. Hopefully, he would have a connection to Sebastian Harry wouldn't be able to ignore. When she stepped out of the alley and onto the road, they were in part of the town the residents called the Garden. Yeah, this is. I'm not changing it now, but this needs to be written. Part of it there's a called the Garden. You know what? They were in a part of the town, the workers, called the Garden Neighborhood because of a large section of grass and plants that plant around, which houses built. This. Yeah, this is gonna be okay. Yeah, welcome to updating the story. Runners, walls were built. It's finished. Walked. Focus. Street. Tibs thought they were close to our destination. Yeah, basically the problem I realized I had with that is that by making this a populated neighborhood, I'm giving Sebastian too much of a foothold already into the town. And it would change the story too much at this point. He was down the lane, ready to continue following her from the ground, when he realized there was essence over him and jumped in time to avoid the crate that fell. Then so focused on the saboteur and used to ignoring normal essence that hadn't paid attention to what had been on the balcony in the balcony's doorway. Building me all attention to what? And I'm gonna leave it to the other. She barely made out the form of someone disappearing inside. He cursed as the okay, this is not gonna be tankered. As the tools. It spilled over broken and rushed for the end of the lane before his target moved out of his range or among. Now, one thing I'm going to have to fix at some point is establishing a when this is taking place. First, moved out of his range or reached a group of workers. I guess I'm setting this in the daytime. A group of workers. Before that the target moved out of his range or reach a group of worker and he lost among all that essence. Wait, actually no, it can't be because I talked about darkened down, so it cannot be a daytime. Okay, first out of his range or left. One still have this or and I'm not at this point. I'm not really bothering with the clunkiness of the phrasing. A man stepped out of a darkened doorway, and Tibs threw himself to the side at the sight of light reflecting off metal. The knife flew by, and he was torchlight. Sight of torchlight reflecting off the metal. The knife flew by, and he was running toward them. They drew a sword, and Tibs stopped. This was more than just keeping him from following her. We don't like it when people interfere with our business. So, Tibs cursed again. She was reaching the edge of his range. He ran again, sending air essence before him, hardening it and compressing it. This man didn't know who Tibs was, and couldn't see his eyes in the dark. When he stepped on the essence, it sent him over the man, who cursed and tried to slice him up. Tibs landed on the other side and ran. He'd have to slow once. He'd have to slow information? Why? By making this deserted, it's no longer. He was making back. what we've lost. Unnoticed people. I don't. More of them. Is this time of the night, and not out of the. He stayed by the door. He slowed as he stepped onto the street, then slowed again. 7 of them. I'm not going to say the. 7 of them stepped forward, each armed with a sword. Told you, the men behind him said. We don't like it when people in our town step out of line. This is my town, Tibs hissed, and I don't like having criminals causing problems for the people who live here. Self against 8 people. He wasn't Jacko. He wasn't sure the fighter could take on these odds, even with his stone skin. He wasn't finding out where she was going tonight, but he had still learned something. Okay, was had further deep Sebastian had spread its people further in his town than Tibs had thought. He ran for an alley, and the closest person to it rushed to block it. 2 women, 2 people. 2 women and a man. Tibs' armored arm. Oh, Tibs armored an arm and made a sword out of ice. He blocked and cut, then shouldered the other aside. The last jumped on him, and they went down. Using earth, he straightened his elbow strike, and she was off him with a surprised cry of pain. He was running and climbing, and only once he was many roofs away did he slow. The cuts in his shirts were coated with a liquid that had a lot of corruption in it. They might not be chasing him because they expected him to be dead soon, regardless. I, Tibs announced as he dropped in the chair, am going to kill each and every one of them. Jekyll looked at him, fingered to his lips. That's a lot of people, Tibs. And the town needs them to be, a town? Tibs glared at the fighter. Sebastian's people. Oh, I'll help. He drank, then returned to eating. What have they done this time to enrage you such? Comdor asked. They're encountered in that new neighborhood. It's almost finished. Jekyll nodded. My father considers this town his. He's going to make sure his people can move about without problems. And with most of the guards under his control, that neighborhood is only the start. How many guards have that magical item that lets them lie to him? Lie to Harry. Trina asked and shrugged. Other than the lieutenant, he suspected a handful of them had one. But all he could say was that they had something with woven essence. Not that it did, not what it did, since he couldn't tell what most of the essences were. And they don't need one to get away with lies, Jacob said. Knuckles is too sure people are afraid to lie to him. And he doesn't believe anyone can lie to him. Maybe you should show him, Karina said, since you said you could lie without actually lying. Knuckles snorted. I'd end up in a cell until I died of old age. Us Wells can be a vindictive bunch of times. I thought Wells were smart, Tibbs replied. Have you met me? Jekyll asked, offended. You really think that act fools any of us, Jekyll? She asked. It's not an act, he predicted. I'm as dense as the stone I'm made of. Fine, she patted his hand. If it makes you feel better, I believe you. He smiled. It does. Dumb and loving man, Joseph said, placing a plate with meats and vegetables before Tim among the tankard. I wouldn't have him any other way. I thought you'd have me any way you could. Tibbs gagged. About to eat here. How about you keep that to your special times? Oh, and how special they are, Joseph said, grinning as he took the empty plates and tankard. You can go with him, Tibbs said to Jackal, as the fighter longingly looked at his man. After the last time I took him away while he worked, his father made it very clear what he'd do to me if I did it again. He grinned at Tibbs, and I need that part so I can. Tibbs groaned as loudly as he could, and Jackal laughed. Have you considered, Kamdar said, watching Tibbs, that this goal of you handling the situation by yourself may be unrealistic? Are you volunteering to help? Karina asked. We will as soon as Tibbs stopped going alone all the time. You're sleeping when the sabotage takes place, Tibbs replied. I too will help, although my skills may not be well suited for such direct endeavor. Then that's just the three of us, Jackal said. Is it? The cleric smiled. Have you perhaps not looked around? Tibbs looked at the room, along with Karina and Jackal, at the people eating, Joseph, and one of his visiting sisters serving them. His father behind the bar, laughing at the people standing there. Russell stepping out of the kitchen to drop a platter of food on the counter for one of the other servers to take. I don't think Joseph's family can do much to help us, Tibbs said. I don't think that's what he means, Karina said thoughtfully. Tibbs looked around again, but only at the people eating this. You know what? At the people eating, drinking, arguing, making plans for the next run. Most of them are runners. They aren't going to help. So all they want to do is get out of this town. And this concludes chapter 51 of Stepping Up. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next one's going to be, subscribe, hit the bell. If you want to support me, you can go to my Patreon and read ahead of the story being posted. If you want to do it for free, you can do that on Royal Road. And if you want to watch me fumble my way through these or write, it's on Twitch. I do the reading every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and the rest of the week I write. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.